created. It was handed to him by Hugo Chavez, who preceded him. Chavez had to decide who was going to follow him when he died. He anointed him sort of shortly before he died. When I say oil socialism, this model of socialism isn't anything that Marx or anybody else would ever think of. When the country was in grave crisis for numbers of years, and so they turned to this person, this military leader, Hugo Chavez, but he had no experience in running anything, and he had no opposition party, and so forth. And what he did over time is he used the largesse of the money coming in from oil, which was a huge amount of money, to distribute. But it turned out he didn't build anything. It was clientelist distribution. And not only, even when the price of oil was highest, he was still borrowing money from Wall Street, and later then from the Chinese, and then from the Russians, basically to buy elections. So it can appear very popular. I'm giving money to the poor. I'm building this, I'm building that. And then you go back later and you tour these places and nothing is completed. It's constantly moving on to something else, creating the basis for a huge kleptocracy.
Exactly. If I may elaborate a little bit on that, I think what Thomas just...
Venezuela's hyperinflation has been estimated at 1 million%. Nowhere has its impact been as devastating as among the country's poor. Freddie Martinez needs medication, but cannot afford to buy any. I spend all the money I have on food. When there is food to buy, that is. Across the country, queues are growing outside stores, with people sometimes waiting for hours for new stock to arrive. And what does arrive is swiftly snapped up. The minimum wage is not even enough to get by on basic food staples. The country's hospitals are full of children suffering from malnourishment and diseases. Last year was incredibly tough for me and for everyone in Venezuela. Amid rising tensions on the street, will the frustration erupt into protests or violent unrest?
Evo, 9 of 10 families are unable.
If you put that together with about what the International Monetary Fund says for this year, which is an inflation of over 10 million%, that's about one of the biggest in history. We're having a humanitarian crisis, and that's precisely the problem. And that's why Maduro cannot stay anymore. Not even as a government, he's not anymore government, but his figure is the representation of chaos in Venezuela, of disaster. He's been a catastrophe for the country. He and his administration together.
And then, why should we assume that things would really change under Juan Guaido?
Because, this crisis in Venezuela and this humanitarian crisis actually is a process that has a long time already. That we can say it began in 2002, 2003 with the exchange control. And then we have in 2013 when Chavez died, that Maduro didn't really did the structural changes that the system needed. And right now, why we can think that Guaido can success? Because then Guaido can have the help of the international community. Right. They can already have some resources that the Maduro regime cannot get.
Can you tell us just a little bit of Venezuelan democracy, or is it about Venezuelan oil? From the perspective of the U.S.
Okay, so this is one of the oldest tropes from back when Chavez came to power in the first place. What is the role of oil in Venezuela? And really, I was there as a Fulbright scholar for 2 years and have been back many times. And through all the various confrontations, it was impossible to see how the U.S. was doing something in order to get control of the oil. The United States has plenty of oil. The market is flooded with oil. There's no particular reason to make this about oil right now. So it's got to do with the logic of the actual crisis itself, the huge numbers of refugees, and the patent, illegitimacy of the present government. However, so you ask about the oil. The thing is, as I said before, when I said Chavez's program was oil socialism, I heard him call it that. Without this tremendous amount of income that was coming in, when the price of oil was astronomically high for all those years, he would have completely collapsed. You mentioned a coup earlier. So by 2002 or 3, after he was in power for 3 or 4 years, he had no program. Things were falling apart. And it was when he defeated this sort of coup that the price of oil was rising very rapidly, and he started all these distributive programs with the advice of Castro to make things like in the barrios, to make missions to the poor with using Cuban doctors and so forth. The thing is, they were really totally incompetent. Venezuela is really a bit of an anomaly. I study OPEC countries. Other OPEC countries can have a war going on, can have their second biggest city occupied by ISIS, and have the production of petroleum increase. Venezuela, with nothing like that, with complete political control, was declining because of the incompetence of his government and the amount of corruption which he had no idea how to do anything about.
And tie in the political model to that economic system. That's also a problem. Yes.
Yeah.
Let me just drill a little bit deeper on the U.S. role.
To the United States.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to hit this thing. It's really not about that. Okay. In this case, there's nothing in the oil market to explain this. So what's happening is it's really come to a point where something has to be done for the Venezuelan people and for the whole region.
Yes.
You know, whether you're altruistic or pragmatic. Colombia is flooded with hundreds of thousands of refugees. So is Brazil.
Yes.
So are many other countries. The amount of Venezuelans in Europe is more than people coming from North Africa. So the United States.
The puzzling thing about this move is, you know, Donald Trump has
Had to move so quickly the other day was Maduro can sell the assets, for example, of Citgo in the United States, and they had to move rapidly to freeze things so that he wouldn't take advantage of that. Half of Citgo is mortgaged to the Russians, and Sechin wants to be paid. It's terrible, the things the Russians are doing, sending armed men and so forth. But they're actually
I'm going
out
to
to get their
stop
money.
you there because it's going to become
It's a
too
lot.
complex.
It's a lot.
But Eva,
It's a lot.
one question in regard to this U.S. support for Guaido. Could it wind up proving counterproductive? Could that, in fact, turn people against Guaido? Because certainly if there's one thing that often unites Latin Americans, it is opposition to U.S. intervention.
Well, not only Latin America, part of Europe is also joined to that, but we got to be really serious on that. I would support what Tom just said. It's as simple as this old imperialistic talk of the 60s. Not anymore. What we're seeing here is democracies standing up for each other and helping each other. We just talked about the crisis of people migrating out of Venezuela, and we have to say...
Did you guys see how as soon as the American dude, the oil socialist dude from America, what he was trying to do was tell her that she goes on to say, well, I thought Trump said that America wasn't going to get involved in other people's battles no more. And as soon as he was defending that, saying that, well, it's not that he's just getting involved in someone's battle. Well, it's that they can sell the oil, they can take it over and sell it. They can take over the asset and sell it somewhere else. It's not really about oil. It's just about them taking it and selling it somewhere else. We have enough oil right now. And she cut him off. She cut him off and turned to this dude.
I don't think so that the Venezuelan people want to go to the civil war because they are not anymore. We cannot say they are supporting really Maduro. The people are really looking for food, medicine, so they just needed also this transition. And on the other side, some kind of military intervention for external intervention, I don't think so that is necessarily. Some weeks ago, so many people were talking about that, but the scenario right now, how it's playing, I think it's possible to find a democratic way for this crisis.
So, interestingly enough, Juan Guaido's move to declare himself president occurred on the anniversary of a military coup 61 years ago.
Nicolas Maduro attending military drills last week in a public display of appreciation for the armed forces. For the beleaguered president, they are the key to his power and political survival. He's backed by most senior military commanders, who in turn enjoy privileges under the regime. As Juan Guaido knows only too well, which is why he's been appealing to ordinary soldiers who can barely live off their wages to join his side. Guaido is promising an amnesty for those who defect. His supporters have been going to army barracks to hand over copies of the offer. And this high-ranking officer could be the man who turns the tide. Colonel Jose Luis Silva, defense attaché at the Venezuelan embassy in Washington. He has called on other members of the military to join him in recognizing Guaido as interim leader. Will the armed forces change sides or help to put down the protests?
So,
Little space for to answer the idea of the civil war. Then I go back to that immediately. The idea of civil war is impossible in Venezuela. We've had until now is as a war against civilians. That ought to be underlined. That's what we've had. A small group of people with enormous support from international spheres having or waging a war against people without weapons, without anything, without food. To the point of the military, I would say Venezuela is quite a complicated issue because the military is fragmented. You just have to know that when you know that there is also this drug problem, which many of the military control. They also control the dealing with the gasoline, which is extremely cheap, has no price at all in Venezuela. So we see a very fragmented military. Their support cannot be counted on. Maduro stays, or a small elite, you could call it like that, still loyal to him. How long will that last? We just don't know. We think it might not be that long, especially counting on the international support we're getting from the United States and from European
so
countries.
amongst that support, are oil. In fact, the U.S. imposed.
Very briefly, because also Venezuela it's a place where joint forces are taking place. I mean, what I want to say is you have terrorism from Hezbollah is in Venezuela. You have drug dealers and cartels working there. You have Russia. You have China. You have non-democratic governments helping the people in power, or the people who were in power. That has been for so long. What we have now is the support, finally, of democracies. This may sound perhaps simplification, but it's democracies against non-democratic governments.
Let me ask you, support.
Fortunately, the Venezuelan people have gotten to this nodal point, and in the United States they have Donald Trump and Mr.
The food and the medicines get to go to the people.
Unfortunately, the Venezuelan people have gotten to this nodal point, and in the United States they have Donald Trump and Mr. Bolton. Mr. Bolton has never seen an intervention he didn't like, and so, as we say in Spanish, cuidado, careful. But even, I think this would be a very difficult situation. The vast majority of Venezuelans oppose an intervention. The opposition opposes an intervention. It's not that simple.
I want title, Anna. Power struggle. Who's going to win it?
Hopefully, without military intervention, Guaido and democracy in Venezuela.
Democracy will prevail. It has to.
The question is the time scale. It's not so clear. There could be if it doesn't come fairly rapidly, you could get a degeneration of the situation, and then all the players change their calculus.
Thank you very much. Over a dramatic economic collapse, declaring the president illegitimate, Juan Guaido, leader of the democratically elected National Assembly, stood before tens of thousands of frustrated Venezuelans last week and had himself sworn in as acting president pending new elections. The police have fired on demonstrators, killing dozens, and they've carted off hundreds to jail. For now, the army's on the side of the regime. The U.S., on the other hand, was quick to recognize Guaido and has not ruled out intervention. Power struggle in Venezuela.
What's going on, guys? What's going on? 1:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Get Truth, Lines, EGMB 5679. Okay, what you just seen, a little brief recap. Moscow's security official says he believes the United States is planning a military intervention in Venezuela. The claim comes after U.S. reporters accused the Venezuelan government of holding them against their will. A Russian security official said on Tuesday he believed Washington was planning. Why do they repeat themselves in these articles? I hate that. Sorry for the hate. Nikolai Pastrov, Secretary of Russian Security Council, said Moscow had agreed to a U.S. proposal to hold talks in Venezuela, a Russian ally, but that the U.S. had postponed them on false pretenses. The United States is preparing a military invasion. This quote, the United States is preparing a military invasion of an independent state, Patrushev said in an intervention with Russian weekly newspaper Argumeny Fakti. Quote, excuse me. The transfer of American Special Operation Forces to Puerto Rico, the landing of U.S. forces in Colombia, and other facts indicate the Pentagon is reinforcing its troops in the region in order to use them in an operation to remove Maduro from power. Those are some claims there, guys. U.S. journalist briefly detained in Venezuela. Wait a minute. Is that actually going to a new article? Okay, no, it's not. Patrushev comments come on the heels of accusations that the Venezuelan government held a reporting team from Spanish-language U.S. television network against their will for more than 2 hours. Univision anchor Jorge Ramos was interviewing President Nicolas Maduro when an altercation took place that he says led to their brief detention. Ramos claims that he and his team were locked up in a security room where the lights were turned off and that their cell phones were confiscated. Quote, he did not like the things we were asking him about the lack of democracy in Venezuela, about torture, political prisoners, about the humanitarian crisis that is going on, Ramos recounted, saying that he showed Maduro a photo of young men eating out of the garbage. According to Ramos, the photo prompted Venezuelan acting president to abruptly leave the interview, and shortly after, the team was stripped of their equipment and personal items. The anchor spoke by phone with Univision News, and the network aired the footage allegedly drew Maduro's ire. Jorge Ramos, here he goes. Let's check it out. Let's check it out. Let's check it out. Let's check it out.
Desde luego, cuéntanos qué mostraban esas imágenes que le enseñaste a Maduro y que lo molestó tanto.
Sí, afortunadamente esas imágenes ya se encuentran en Miami. Yo personalmente las filmé en mi teléfono celular.
Aquí creo que las estamos viendo.
Hold on, guys. They're speaking another language, so there's no reason to play it out loud. Let me see. They start talking different. Okay, so no. Nope. Nothing to see here. It's like, no. Yeah. It's all bad. It's all Spanish. No love. Alright. Let's get back to it. Why would it skip all the way ahead, man? Sorry, guys. Okay, here we go. U.S. State Department official Kimberly McGeorge announced. Sorry, hold on, guys. Okay. Announced the team's detention on Twitter. Quote, the State Department has received word that journalist Jorge Ramos and his team are being held against their will at Miraflores Palace by Nicolas Maduro. We insist on their immediate release. The world's watching, Breer said. Unquote. And this is by Kimberly McGeorge. As State Department has received word that journalist and his team are being held against their will. Venezuelan Information Minister Jorge Rodriguez denounced Univision on Twitter, arguing that the government has welcomed hundreds of journalists on the Miraflores presidential palace. But Rodriguez said Caracas did not support quote-unquote cheap shows orchestrated with the help of the U.S. Department of State. Venezuela Press Workers Union said on Twitter that the members of Venezuelan security services had surrounded the hotel where the journalists were staying and had notified the team that they would be taken to the airport in the morning as part of deportation procedures. Univision is one of the largest Spanish language broadcasters in the U.S. Ramos, of Mexican origin, is one of the network's most prominent anchors and is known for his tough and confrontational style during his interviews. In 2015, he is rejected from a press conference of then-candidate Donald Trump after he refused to sit down and continued to press Trump over his pledge to deport undocumented immigrants from the U.S. Well, alright, so here's the thing, man. Here's what I'm getting, man. Alright? Now, here's the scoop, guys. Here's what I'm getting on this, alright? Of course, what you just heard on that little interview, I tried to skip through. I just listened to that for 45 minutes. What I get out of that is the same thing you heard, in that they're all disagreeing, basically. And at least the one American and the girl were actually more in agreement than the two Venezuelan people. That female didn't agree with the Venezuelan dude. And that white lady that was reporting it, was talking American, is supposed to be a Russian. It's supposed to be like somehow with Russia and cahoots with Russia along the line. She has a Russian name too. Alright, so I don't know, man. They supposedly they want the Venezuelan people want aid. Okay, they want it, but the American is saying that they don't want it, and the Venezuelan people are saying they do want it, but they lit trucks on fire. They did this, they did that. You guys seen all the stuff that happened a couple days ago. I made a video about it. We talked about it on live stream. Now, dude, one thing I know is that America gets involved when innocent civilians start getting shot and people start dying and getting injured like that. That's when America is going to get involved in someone else's. That's what's going to start the war right there. Let alone if they wanted to aid, why aren't they taking it? You get what I'm saying? Now, also I seen that Maduro is worried that the soldiers might turn on him and stop listening to him. According to the Venezuelan people, they think that he might turn, like he ain't gonna keep, like he ain't. Soldiers are gonna be unloyal, basically. And he used to be a bus driver, and somehow out of nowhere got involved in all this, and now he's running for, wants to be president. What they need is an election, and you guys heard the part where they're saying it ain't necessarily a civil war; it's the soldiers versus civilians. Hold up. Okay, my fault. I had to pause it real quick. Anyway, guys, I mean, that really wraps this up right here. This is going to play out. We're going to see what happens. God forbid any more lives get lost, and God forbid any more injuries occur. But I hate to say this, I'm sure there is. This next week coming up is going to determine a lot. It's gonna give us indications of where this is headed, and what they need to do is have an election. That's I guess the civil way to handle it, but something deeper, man. I mean, the U.S. is good on oil. I can't see this being all about oil. We're good on oil. Anyway, man, pray about it. Pray if you want. Pray if you can. I'll be praying about this. I'll also be praying for all you guys. I'll be praying for my family. And, the same stuff I usually pray about. Look, much love to each and every one of you guys, man. I'm going to get on to reading some more stuff. This just took 45 minutes. But, much love. Stay up, be safe, and stay prepared. You know what I mean? If you have prep and stuff, good. Keep prepping. This could get ugly, man. This could affect American lives. America, good. If we got involved in this, it could be an ugly war. Hopefully we don't have to. But anyway, everyone stay up. Be safe. Much love. Get true to that line. This is Iggy 579. Like, share, subscribe.